What's with all the hoses? Hi folks, this is Alec Peirce from Scuba 2000 again with another tech tip. Today I want to talk very briefly about double hose regulators or two hose regulators. They have different terms. Some people have seen them, some people know a bit about them. You should. It's a big part of the history of the sport of scuba diving. In fact, for the first 25 or 30 years, all regulators that were used by scuba divers looked just like this, something like this. They had a regulator, if you like, that attached to the tank, and they had two great big corrugated hoses that came around their head. Mouthpiece went into the mouth, and this is how you breathe. This is the way it was. There was no alternative. There were no single hose regulators that hadn't come along yet. This is very similar to the very first scuba unit. Now, mind you, the word scuba had not been invented yet. This was called various names. Two hose regulator, double hose regulator, lung. That's right. A long time ago, there was one of these regulators. It was called the lung. That was its model. It was called the lung. And a lot of divers were called lung divers. This is before the word scuba. So interesting, these regulators worked for a long time, and they still work today. In most cases, these older, very old, in fact, they stopped producing these in about 1975. You realize that's 40 years ago. But these old regulators were their rigs to use. But there's still a lot of them around. And I service a lot of these regulators. I have a very large collection of vintage equipment going back to the 40s. Yes, there was scuba diving in the 40s. And so a lot of people from all over the world, all over North America and even from Europe, will send me their old two hose or double hose regulators for service. They usually arrive in a cardboard box or a plastic bag, and they look pretty rough. They're kind of like this. The mouthpiece is all chewed up and broken. The hoses are usually broken off. The rubber's gone dry, and it cracks very easily and comes apart like so. And they ask me, Alec, please make my two hose regulator, please make my vintage or antique regulator brand new again. And I am able to do that in many cases. It's a lot of fun. I do it for the enjoyment. And it's nice to see these old pieces of equipment that I used when I started diving still being used, largely for display dives and for underwater scenarios, sea hunt scenarios, other kinds of vintage activities. We actually run a vintage double hose certification program here at Scuba 2000, PADI certification, where you would learn all about these two hose regulators, what they were good for, why they weren't so good, and you actually use them in the pool and in open water. We actually go diving in open water. You get that unique experience. Very few divers get that experience, the chance of trying one of these old-fashioned regulators. I can get all new parts. Here's modern hoses now, made of silicone, all new mouthpieces. There are no parts being made for these regulators, but I have so many that I have a lot of spare parts and bits and pieces. So I can usually take your old beat-up regulator and turn it into something beautiful again. Look at this gorgeous one. All chrome. They were all chrome back in those days. Riveted plates, name plates on it. Beautiful old regulators. And they work. I can put this regulator, for instance, on my test bench right here. This is just like a tank valve. Put it on, turn the air on, and gosh, I'm a scuba diver. Let's go diving. So this is a lot of fun. Keep it in the back of your mind if you have any interest. This also applies, by the way, to the older but more recent regulators. Here's an old MR2 regulator from the 70s or 80s. And here's an old Decor regulator, big name Decor. There's your regulators from the 80s and 90s. I have a lot of divers bring in their old equipment and ask me to see if I can service it and make it like new. I enjoy it. The divers get a big kick out of having their old scuba gear back in good running order again, and sometimes they get a chance to go out and use it as well. It will not replace modern equipment. You know, there's no place on these old pieces of equipment to put a safe second or even a pressure gauge, much less a BC inflator hose. Sometimes we can make modifications and accommodate those, but generally speaking, these are reserved for fun dives, short and shallow dives, really more for fun than anything else, and it is a lot of fun. Anyway, if you get a chance, pop into Scuba 2000 and take a look at some of my two hose, my vintage, my ancient, old-fashioned regulators, if you like, and ask me some questions. That reminds me, by the way, if you do have questions about the courses or about these old regulators, just ask me those questions on YouTube. I'll get you as quick as I can. So, two hoses are better than one. Maybe. Anyway, this is Alec Peirce. I hope you enjoyed just a little bit of history. Talk to you again soon.